That's why
I mean, I think if the polls are to be believed, people all over Minnesota, particularly swing voters in areas like Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, St. Louis Park, etc., they're seeking some sort of balanced solution. They're not stuck in the extremes.
We're lucky to have with us Representative Steve Simon. Steve is truly one of the best citizen legislators. Steve represents Hopkins and half of St. Louis Park. He's running for a 5th term in House District 46B. Political pundits and those in the know call this a safe, sometimes a very safe DFL area. Steve, are you relaxed about this campaign?
I'm never relaxed about any campaign. I always run like I'm a few points behind, truly. I take nothing for granted, and I should point out, though it's comforting to hear that description by the pundits, I beat an incumbent Republican legislator to get there. So it wasn't always so, and it might not always be so I never take anything for granted.
When you're out going door to door, and I know you're going door to door, what are the people that you're representing telling you is on their mind and what they want you to be doing over in St. Paul, other than get over this awful gridlock that seems to be going on?
Well, you put your finger on it. People don't like the gridlock, and at least in my district, I'm happy to say, I think they really get it about the gridlock. They don't say to me, hey, I wish you folks would agree on more, because I think people have an understanding that we're not there to necessarily agree with one another all the time. It's okay to have a spirited debate. But what they don't like is the game playing, and neither do I. And over the last couple of years, I think we've seen from the folks in charge in the legislature too much pure partisan game playing.
We're talking, of course, about the Republican-controlled legislature.
That's right.
Which started in 2010, right?
Right.
As I recall, focus was going to be on jobs and business climate. And what do we see? One constitutional amendment after another, all driven by a national attempt on the part of the Republicans to disadvantage many voters and to appeal to hot-button issues which they think are going to promote their interests. But do you sense, Steve, that the Republican leadership over at the state capitol has been influenced by national Republican groups such as ALEC and so forth?
There is no question in my mind that there is a herd mentality among conservative Republican leadership across the country in state house after state house, capital after capital, and Minnesota is no exception. There is no question in my mind that they are certainly taking inspiration, if not orders, from some of the national groups you mentioned and others. And it's really unfortunate. We're seeing these cookie-cutter proposals that come out of think tanks, God knows where, to do things that not only is Minnesota not accustomed to, but that are very un-Minnesotan. You know, you take these constitutional amendments in particular. I mean, think about it. For 4 years, Democrats had control of both the House and the Senate and showed what I think was admirable restraint. We did not, as the Republicans are doing now, load up the ballot with hot-button issues that seem to pull well on the surface, that animate and agitate their political base, and that are geared, at least in part, to gin out turnout in a general election. We didn't do that. And you don't see the same reverence or restraint on the part of the Republicans who are running the show right now. Instead, it's load up the ballot with these hot-button issues and look at what cost. Really divisive and hurtful constitutional amendments, which now have us mired in multi-million-dollar election campaigning, so unnecessary and such a real waste of time when what people really want to talk about are jobs, the economy, transportation, healthcare, schools, clean air. That's what people want to talk about.
I'm looking forward to the Democrats taking the House back and the Senate back. What do you think the prospects of that are?
Better than 50%. I don't think anyone should kid themselves, though. It's going to be tough. I think there's a better than 50% chance that Democrats will take back at least one chamber. Let's put it this way, trying to be objective here for a minute, I'd rather be us than them.
You know, one thing that I would add here to your credit, Steve, is that you and others in your Senate district have provided assistance to us in the Edina, West Bloomington area, and I hope you continue to do so because we've got 3 seats that I think are winnable in that area, and with a lot of hard work by the candidates, a lot of hard work by the people of Senate District 49, and help from people like yourself, I think we have a chance to add to the Democratic vote over in St. Paul.
You know, half the battle is getting good candidates, and you've got good candidates in those 3 seats, and that's a big deal.
I want to give you an opportunity to sort of blow your own horn here, Steve. What legislative accomplishments are you most proud of in your service as a legislator over in St. Paul?
Well, several. One is making sure that we can guard against some of the worst cuts to education. I consider myself a champion of K-12 education. At least that's a huge issue in my district, and kind of being a strong voice for education issues generally. But in terms of specific legislation, I passed something a few years ago that I'm particularly proud of called the False Claims Act, which I like to call a big deal bill with a very boring name. And it basically incentivizes people, namely whistleblowers, to uncover fraud against the taxpayers, government. And it's a way to get revenue for the state that is not cutting anyone and that is not raising anyone's taxes. Rather, it's going after people who ultimately would seek to defraud the state. So that's something I'm very proud of.
With respect to that, what has been the track record as respects that piece of legislation?
One of the compromises in passing the bill was to delay the effective date of the bill. So we really have now, at this point, less than 2 years of the bill's life, and these cases move very slowly. Mm-hmm. So far, we're still waiting for the results, and I think over the coming years we'll see the results. But I think in terms of fostering a culture of accountability and making sure that we can get at that kind of fraud and get compensated as a state for that kind of fraud, I think we're on the right track.
What other legislative accomplishments have you been able to put in place?
Well, I'm proud of several provisions I've gotten into law that protect victims of domestic violence, battered women, and others, whether it's enhancing the Safe at Home program, which is a program run through the Secretary of State's office that protects women in particular who are victims of abuse and make sure that they are sheltered where their abuser can't find them, whether it's making sure that women who are the victims of abuse can, on short notice and without penalty, change their residential leases if they live in an apartment building, if they have to flee an abuser. That's been something that I've been very involved with. And then I'm also very proud of my role in being the champion in the House for the Southwest Corridor Light Rail Line. I've been the chief author for the last several years.
Which is going to run right through your district, is it?
It is. It sure is. And I think it's very popular here in the West Metro area. Every dollar that we appropriate for the state unlocks $9 from other sources.
Excuse me, Steve, but if it's so popular and it's such a common sense bill, why do you have the Republican legislators out here in Eden Prairie and other places opposed to it?
Exactly. Well, that's just it. You have Republican legislators, Republican committee chairs, one of whom said, pun intended, that he wanted to stop the project in its tracks. Now, why would we do that? I don't know. Now, I'm all for expanding roads. 169, let's do it. 494, let's add that lane. Highway 100, you bet. And I've been behind many of those initiatives. But we can't just pave our way out of the problem. And if we want to be a mature, modern metro area with peer cities like Denver and Chicago and San Francisco, then we've got to do what those metro areas do, which is build a transit system that can make us all proud and that can move people efficiently from point A to point B, whether it's for work purposes and commute purposes or other purposes.
Steve Simon, you're a prince of a guy. Thanks for the intelligent, balanced, and articulate service in the Minnesota House of Representatives.
My pleasure.
That's all. We'll see you next time.
Democratic Visions is handmade by volunteers through DFL Senate District 48, Eden Prairie and Minnetonka. Lori Pryor, Chair.